What's up, jammies? It's Ricky Hollywood, and this is Ricky's Ram Jam, sponsored by Barefoot Wine. It's Tuesday as we record this. I'm feeling good. Last night, the Monday night game wasn't exactly the result that we wanted, but there was some really positive things to take away from it. And later on the show, I'm going to have Jourdan Rodrigue from The Athletic come on, and she is going to talk us through that game because she was there on the ground, not in the ground. She was on the field at one point, so we're going to get into that, talk with her. And then look ahead to the Cowboys. So the NFC West standings after week 3. Like I said, we're going to get into the Monday Night Football game in a little bit. But the Cardinals beat the Panthers 26-16, which so now they're 2-2. And the Seahawks beat the Lions in a scoregami game of 48-45. So now everyone is tied at 2-2. Technically a clean slate moving forward, so let's just focus on that. Now, I had such a great conversation with Jourdan that I want you to be able to listen to the whole thing. So no fan questions this week, even though we got a few, so I'm going to push them to next week. And if you haven't sent some in and you want to, please do. I love reading them. They've been awesome so far. Ricky's Ram Jam at rams.nfl.com. Send in some more emails. I love them. I'll get to some more next week. All right, joining me now is Jourdan Rodrigue. She is, let's say, the beat writer for the LA Rams for The Athletic, but I think they misspelled beat because it should say best writer for the Athletic. Jourdan, what is up? I'm so excited that you're here, number one. Number two, I'm like fangirling. I still am. It's just like every time we text or I'm texting you, like, can you explain this to me at 11 o'clock at night during training camp? And you're talking me off a ledge. Like, I'm just so thankful and grateful for you as a friend and as a person and that someone that's attached to this Rams team. Like, I bow down, queen. Like, you are everything. How are you?
You're the best. That made my day. I personally also appreciate that every time we see each other, we do like
we're like, hey,
the finger guns or some weird like. It's like, oh my god, it's so great to see you, and then do like some like pew 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 pew.
Some weird thing, yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. How are you? So okay. We're gonna, pull back the kimono here. It's Tuesday at like 4:30.
I'm wearing my corduroy kimono. Actually,
there you go. So. There you go. 4:30 on a Tuesday. This might not even come out till Wednesday. We'll talk about Monday Night Football, which for us was last night. Could be 2 nights ago. Just we're very frazzled here, and by here I mean Ricky's Ram Jam. I'm all over the place today. It's been a wild day, but nothing compared to Jourdan, who was at Levi Stadium last night till God knows when. Got on a plane this morning, which is Tuesday, as we're taping this. Yeah, I don't even know what day it is. And then you flew back to the LA region. And then you had pressers to go over. You had your own podcast, which everyone should be checking out if they aren't already, 11 Personnel. And then you're stuck with me. So is your head on straight? Are you feeling okay? Like, what's the latest?
I'm good. I'm feeling caffeinated. I'm delighted to be here with you. I've been stoked. I've been sort of checking my phone, refreshing, my emails over the last couple of weeks since you started this thing, just waiting for my invite. I have not missed an episode. I've loved what you've been putting together. Big fan of the Training Camp Morning Minute, as I know many of the players are. And I think you do such a kick-ass, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, for sure.
Killer job. Just like, where is my mind? Yeah. I think you do such a great job with everything you do at the Rams. We could go on and on and on about this. I tell you this all the time in person. I'm so stoked that you're around here and doing such great work. And it's just cool. I just, the season gets to be a grind right around this point, especially with, a loss like that the Rams had against San Fran and sort of a gut check situation and dealing with injuries and all this stuff. And everybody who's in the orbit definitely feels that in terms of how you're covering it, what you're trying to troubleshoot, and then, in all sorts of different ways, and not to take away from the effort of the people who are actually playing the game. But, people, it gets to be, the season does get to be a grind. So it's so great to be around refreshing people who are just like truly delightful. So I'm stoked to be here.
Oh, you're the best. You're the best. I want to talk Monday Night Football. I don't want to talk about it, but I feel like we have to. But before that, I just want to like talk about you, like Jordan, for a little bit. I know you hate that, and I know that's probably making you squirm right now. But like, explain to me the process for you. Like, was it always football? Was it always sports? You've been in different cities before. Like, why LA? Like, why football writing? I know why. I mean, you're so talented. You're just, you see the game better than anyone I know. But what got you to this point?
I think it's going to sound really cheesy, but I'm a little loopy and I'm running on like 2 hours of sleep for the last 3 days. So I'm just going to say it. Like, I feel like I'm on the earth to tell stories, and I didn't really know how that was going to look. I loved writing since I was very, very young. I used to pretend to write books, and I would ask my mom to, like, she was the only one in the family who could type, so she would type them all out. Like, I'd dictate to her, and she'd write everything down in these massive notebooks, and then type it all out, and we'd pretend that I was having a book signing and all of those things. And
that's amazing.
I used to do that when I was a kid, and I've always been so fascinated by storytelling and writing in general. I used to save all the back pages of Sports Illustrated because I felt like sports really showcase the human spirit in its totality, for better or for worse, and everything in between. And football especially does that. And I've always loved football because of the juxtaposition between what you see and what is real. And what you see is a physical, brutal, violent game that takes a toll on people, and that part is real. But you also, when you peel back layer after layer after layer, you see this beautiful mess of emotion and humanity, people becoming who they are and growing and being shaped by each other and learning and failing and getting back up. And to me, that's what being a human is about. And I always was really drawn to that, just as like, if I could tap into that, I would never be short of stories to tell. And then as I got older and started to learn more and more about football, and was able to be in some really cool atmospheres when I was young, like Boise State upset Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, and the ground shook, and you sit there and you're like, football brought me into this moment right here, and wanting to learn all about why those trick plays worked, and why Chris Peterson was such a mad scientist, and all of those types of things. And I just became so enamored in how things work, because I think it's a subset of how people work, right? And so for me, that was where I just really started sort of like this obsessive journey of learning that I'm on, where I always joke, and I'm not really joking, where I'm like, this is my life. This is what I do, and it's who I am, and I'm happy about that, because I get to learn something every single day. And that's what beat writing is. You get to learn something every day, and you get to share that with the world. And the way that I try to do that is, I fail a lot, but I try to do that in a very empathetic way, where I'm learning about the whole part of a situation, the whole aspect of a human within that situation, and sort of breaking that down and dissecting that, whether it's what's happening on the field, which I love to get into, and all the chess match of that, or people and what makes them tick and who they are in their wholeness and their totality as humans.
I love how you balance that, because I feel, when I look at all the work that you do, it is amazing to see how you actually cover the game. But then your piece, like the Bobby Wagner piece, comes out, and that is just such a moving piece that everyone was just gobbling up the second it came up. Even to something during training camp for Kira Bishop, who was a equipment assistant, who all of a sudden, was getting involved with the players, which I got to witness firsthand, which was just, to me, it was like, oh, that was a kick-ass moment. I love that. And then all of a sudden, I was like, didn't even register in my brain of like, let's go deeper into this. And then you, of course, produced this stellar piece about her, which was just, it's so awesome. Okay, let's go over last night. Barefoot Wine, I know you're listening. You haven't sent me another shipment of wine. We're going to need it to talk about last night. So if you're listening, just like FedEx that as quickly as possible, because we need that right now. Jordan, you were there last night. The energy was unmatched. You were on the field pregame. The energy seemed wild. There's a lot going into Niner week. Do you look at this and after going, to listening to McVay today, Coach McVay as well, I'm rambling all over the place because I guess I don't even know where to start. I know Coleman Shelton could be out now the 4 to 6 weeks with a high ankle sprain. Like, is the O-line the major problem that the Rams need to address here moving forward, or that's like a word vomit way of like fix my life and my mind right now, Jourdan? Like, give me the upside right now.
Yeah, I mean, in the 2 losses that the Rams have had, the pressure has been the issue. And the caveat, obviously, is they're facing really, really good defenses that are expertly pressuring this early in the season, which generally would bode well for the sustainability of that type of pressure. The 49ers, they were able to bring 4 previously, like a 43% rate, which is insane and excellent for them. And it means that they could, obviously have more DBs on the backside and cloud things up for passing games. And it just makes your defense just overall better when you can successfully rush 4, especially if you're playing zone on the back end. And then the Bills did the same thing. The Bills did not blitz one time. But the interesting thing, and probably the detriment to the Rams in some ways, was the 49ers came into this game on Monday night understanding that they would have to win up front because they were themselves facing some issues on their own offensive side of the ball, and you obviously have to factor in counter Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd and Greg Gaines and A'Shaun Robinson and figure that out, and Bobby Wagner. And so they knew they'd have to get going very quickly and get in the Rams' faces and get in Matthew Stafford's face very quickly, and they did that. And the injury to Coleman Shelton, that's a freak thing. He's been playing really well, and I think he's done a really admirable job, sort of one of the more underrated quarter-way point MVPs to this point, where he had won that right guard spot and then had to go move over to center because of injuries again.
Right.
And was playing well. And with Alaric Jackson moving into the right guard spot, I think they've been playing, especially on that right side, they'd kind of been holding it down pretty well. And, relative to the type of pressure they were facing. And then when Coleman goes down, you kind of saw the 49ers' ears perk up on the defensive side, because not only could they already feel confident, most likely, that they could have been successfully pressuring with 4 through the whole game, because they changed centers specifically, in my mind, and from what I saw, the Rams then, you kind of now are susceptible to different types of pressure because of the communication, the calls that the center makes. So you saw an uptick. The 49ers, unlike the Bills, who did not blitz at all, the 49ers blitz on 25% of their pressure snaps. And that's a pretty significant increase from what they had to do before, because, again, they were so successful without the blitz. And to me, that was sort of telling, because that communication, that's number one, that's got to get fixed. Pass pro in all phases, that will have to get fixed. There are ways to scheme around an offensive line that is stumbling a bit because of injury. Because without injury, I think this unit could play very, very well, and we've seen flashes of it. But with the injuries, you're working on teams that will now try to capitalize not just on the fact that it's new people who are sort of further down on the depth chart, because it has been a bit of an injury catastrophe in the front, but also the communication, who's turning around and looking for calls from the quarterback instead of getting them into his right ear from the center, or his left ear from the center, right? Those types of things, calling out the safeties, and instead the safeties are blitzing a lot because now, nobody's responsible for calling the safeties except for the quarterback, and that's really hard to do in a loud stadium, and it just sort of, it just starts rolling down a hill, right? Like, oh man. And so that was, I think, when the Rams have had those types of games, those 2 losses, when the pressure's been that radical, it's affected every single facet of what they need to do and want to do in their offense. It affects how the routes develop. It affects who Matthew Stafford can go to in his progressions. It affects, the type of or non-type of quick game that they can or cannot get going. It affects their run game. It affects, moving the pocket because they can't get the play action going, because delayed pressure is now cutting those like looping actions, all these things that you saw. And it was just, it compounds, right, when you can get that type of consistent pressure. And I think there is a positive to the end of this, in that guys will get healthy. Not all of the injuries that they're facing are season ending. They should get David Edwards back sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed for him. And they should get Brian Allen back, if not before the bye, then certainly after the bye. And Coleman Shelton's injury is not season ending. So I think and your tackles are doing pretty good job, I think. So I think that it's not all bad, but it's like, how do you problem solve around it in the short term to get you to the long term, to where now you start building off some of that cohesiveness and guys actually, staying healthy and getting a good front for Matthew Stafford, and importantly for some of these route combinations that they like to do and some of this run game stuff that they like to do.
Yeah, so let's look forward to the Cowboys. It's a short week. It feels way too short. I can't even only imagine how. I'm just like, is it already? It's just crazy to me. You're in that room with McVay during pressers. He knows you by name, which I love when those clips go out and he says your name and stuff. I'm always like, that's so awesome. I love that. You know how he is. He is a mastermind. He is. I like feel bad for him and his wife. Like, did he I bet he didn't sleep last night. I bet he was drawing on some whiteboard last night until, who knows what time in the morning.
Sitting in a room, rocking back and
just
forth
like
with a marker in his hand.
Like, he is such, he's just such a consummate professional too. Like, I just watching him at the press conference even last night, I'm like, I don't handle my emotions like that, so I'm just like, he is just so incredible to me, and I'm just always in such awe of him. But yes, it's a short week. Yes, there's a lot of things that this team needs to scheme up essentially for Dallas. You've got DeMarcus Lawrence, who is playing fantastically. You've got Trayvon Diggs fantastically. I don't even know if that's a word, but I just may have made it one, or it is a word, and we're going to go with it. You got Trayvon Diggs, who people are arguing could be like one of the top 3 corners in the game right now.
He takes the ball away well. That's key with a turnover-laden team to this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot to look. Jerry Jones on Tuesday came out and said that he doesn't think that Dak will be playing. Mike McCarthy said that he wants him to be throwing for a week. So it does look like we're getting Cooper Rush, who that's a whole other social media hole if you want to go down that, because he is 4-0 as a starter for the Cowboys, and so there's all these memes about Dak being like, hey, I'm gonna get my job back, and Cooper Rush being like, what job? So it's kind of funny, Rams fans, if you want to go down that hole. It's very fun. But that being said, they have a backup quarterback who didn't play the best in the preseason. Yes, he's playing well now. That game against the Bengals was something else that I think was. I think that yes, this Dallas defense is difficult. Their offense, they got Michael Gallup back, who's going to be integrated into this. But I guess my question to you, Jordan, is as you're like, I feel like I'm in therapy. You're like calming my anxieties and my nerves. Can you take me through kind of some of these, and I know you just did, the adjustments that this team is going to make going forward? Just like keep making me feel better. Just keep talking, because it's just
my advice. This would be my advice, and I don't have any sort of input at all, so please don't yell at me if you're listening to this. But I have been noting, like, I've done a very surface level dive so far into Dallas, and you kind of just, as you know, you go week to week and kind of by the seat of your pants on these things. And countering Micah Parsons, he's their star player. He does it in a different way than Jalen Ramsey does it, obviously, but it's all with the intents and purposes of getting to the quarterback and also just shaking and rattling up the middle of the field when he can. And that's going to be so important for the Rams to always be aware of where he is. The fact that he is around the line of scrimmage, and then you have Diggs on the backside who does take the ball away. I know sometimes that can be a bit of a lopsided statistic, but at the same time, he does take the ball away. And so you really you marry that with the type of pressure and the awareness that you always have to have of Parsons. And I think that that's a tandem that you really need to be aware of at all times. And again, like the different layers you're setting up on the field and the different ways that you're manipulating the coverages and calling pressure and communicating that pressure. Big game for the guys who will be in pass pro, whether it's the running backs, tight ends, Cooper Kupp, just doing the dang thing every chance he gets, Ben Skoranek, like any of these guys who often you've seen pulled back closer to the stack to help with that. That'll be a big game for them. And I think, too, like, this is on the other side, I'm really interested in, and I think this defense possibly could get a chance to show what it can do when the quarterback maybe isn't getting the ball out of his hand
Out
at
as
record
fast.
speeds. Yeah, it's like been bonkers fast against this front, and that's the way you play Aaron Donald, really. I mean, the only thing that helps, you could send 16 players and be called for all kinds of illegal penalties to sort of like just form a ring around Aaron Donald at all times, and you probably still would give up a couple of sacks in that game. So really the thing that helps other teams and has helped, and you can also perhaps fail doing this if you don't have yards after catch players or explosives or whatever, you get the ball out quick. And teams have been doing that at a record rate so far through the season. It's well under league average. And so what I would say is the Rams are blitzing a lot so far in order to manufacture pressure, because they maybe hadn't been getting the right type of pressure with just 4, again, in tandem to the fact that quarterbacks are getting the ball out really fast. I would like to see them, what happens if you lay off the blitz a minute. Cooper Rush has been really, really good against the blitz. And I think he's got like don't quote me on this, but I think he's got like the highest EPA per drop back specifically against the blitz, like only on blitz plays.
I think I saw that too, actually.
Yeah, and so I think you really want to be wary of that, and you want to see if you can get that, not just the pressure, but also just that middle pocket penetration with 4. You want to see how many DBs you can come back and crash down from depth. If you can keep more guys on the backside and keep Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field instead of crashing him down to the line of scrimmage. I think that those types of things could be really relevant factors in this game. And I also honestly think it's a good way for this defensive line to show what it really looks like. I don't think they've gotten a chance to show what they really look like. They did really well, other than the one run explosive against San Francisco. They really bottled up the run. It was like something like 52 rushing yards, net rushing yards, minus that touchdown by Jeff Wilson. So I think, you've seen what they can do in that regard, but you really want to see if they can rush the passer. They haven't really had a ton of opportunities to pin their ears back and really do that. In part because of the factors I mentioned. And so I think that the Rams front office, I think, needs to see that, frankly. I think you need to really figure out what you are as a pass rush before, the end of the month, before you go up against a slate of quarterbacks that include like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. I think you really, really need to figure out what you need to do. And so figuring out ways to manipulate that pressure against a quarterback who is very, very good against a specific type of pressure that you maybe don't want to be dependent on. It's a good opportunity to figure out what you got on the other side.
I feel like this Sunday against the Cowboys is going to be a get-right game. It's at home in the building. Everyone's going to be sort of a short week to lick their wounds and just really kind of dive into the next page. The two teams so far that haven't allowed more than 20 points have been the Niners and the Cowboys. So the offense really needs to get cooking, and I feel confident that this team will be able to do it. So normally, Jordan, during this time, I play a game called How Many. I don't want to play it right now just because I feel like all the information you just gave is so valuable. I don't want to take away from it. So I'm just going to kick it to the Ram Jam, where I probably ask you the most intense questions you've ever been asked in your entire life. Okay, so which Rams moment is your favorite of all time?
Oh, man. Well, I got to hold the Lombardi trophy, which I never thought in my entire life that my fingerprints would exist on.
That's amazing.
That was very, very cool. But really, I think it's actually in the small things, and I'm going to be cheesy again, and I'm sorry, guys. I know you didn't, log into this podcast to hear me just be, really cheesy and earnest, but I don't care. That's who I am as a person. I feel a lot of things, and so I feel my feelings. and so, really, it's been just some of the interviews. I mean, I think I say this all the time, and I'm not blowing smoke when I say this, and I've said this for a couple of years now. This is a remarkably secure group of people, in my opinion, and it's a really good locker room. It's a really, really good, smart, secure locker room. And they are not afraid to show you who they are. And so my favorite memories and moments have just been really little things where, sitting across in a chair from Bobby Wagner and him just all of a sudden that unspoken torch of trust is passed, right? Where you're you're understanding what a gift someone is giving you in terms of telling their story to you, or just hearing, you know, being in the room with Jalen Ramsey when he calls his dad and asks him some really, you know, deep and personal questions about their life together, and or, you know, even simple stuff like when they were shooting the intro video for 2021, and it was like this big, like Christopher Nolan-esque Wally Pfister production, right, at SoFi, and there's this huge crew there. It's like 1,000 people are there, and this famous director, cinematographer, and there's drones everywhere and all this stuff, and they're doing this like dolly cam. I don't know if I'm saying the right words for it. They're doing like this dolly cam moment with Aaron Donald. Like in between takes, he's like pulling faces at his kids who are playing in the end zone, and they're just losing their minds laughing because it's like this super serious, like iconic moment, and he's just turning around and pulling faces at them, and like just stuff like that. The human moments, they've gotten me through the last couple of years, and they really have this way of grounding you, I think, as a human, if you open yourself up to them and to seeing and experiencing those things. So also seeing you in person all the time. Oh, that's another one of my favorite moments. Yeah.
Oh my God. Me too, Jordan. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Tacos.
Oh, same. I feel like I would just go all Mexican food, like any type of Mexican food. I will just like, that's all I need to like put a limit, because that could be really bad.
I feel like I can get all my food groups in them too. Like I can, you know, I can get veggies and protein and, you know,
a couple
like
carbs.
You can do anything. Yeah.
Plenty of carbs. Have you seen that video? That's group. Like, would you eat like 15 like tortillas? And people are like, no, what? And then they're like, what if I chop them up into little triangles and then fry them? And they're like, oh yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
I'll eat, yeah, for sure. What would you do if fear was not a factor and you could not fail? Ooh.
I would play inside linebacker in the National Football League.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. I think you're a little too small. But if you could not fail,
if failure was not an option,
right?
You know, like if I could be totally without fear and then know that I wouldn't fail, aka have my body shattered into a million pieces the first hit that I take, or get completely embarrassed and put in a blender by like someone running by me, like that, I would do that. I'm so obsessed with like how that chess match unfolds, right? And like all of the communication and the knowledge that goes into playing that position. And I've been really lucky in my career to cover a couple of future Hall of Fame inside linebackers. And I think that it's like, I've just been so fascinated. I'm like, man, if I am very good in this life, maybe I can reincarnate and be like, okay, at the position in my next life, right?
Like a nice, like second stringer, get a huge moment when someone goes down.
I'll contribute on teams. I'll reincarnate as Christian Roseboom. How about that?
Yeah, she can contribute in all three phases. Yeah,
it's all tied up now, but I've got the hair. You know,
you nailed it, Jordan. Thank you. I know it's been a crazy day for you. Thanks for hanging out with me. You're the best. I love you, and I can't wait to see you at home at SoFi this Sunday for the Cowboys.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll come back anytime. You actually probably cannot get me away from being on this podcast.
Perfect. Yes. New co-host, you guys. You heard it here. There she goes, Jourdan Rodrigue. Such a pleasure as always. You guys know wine and football aren't that different. Sure, they're complex, but enjoying them should be easy. You don't need to worry about complex formations and flavor profiles or which wine pairs with what. All that matters is together, Barefoot Wine and the Rams are easy to enjoy. So let's enjoy ourselves. Barefoot, the official wine sponsor of the NFL. Thanks so much to Jourdan. I absolutely love her. She has so much knowledge. That's amazing. Make sure you're going and following her if you're not already. That does it for this week's Ricky's Ram Jam. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, leave 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Watch this on YouTube if you're listening. Listen to this if you're watching on YouTube. Whatever floats your boat. Go Rams. Short week. Let's get on to the Cowboys. Let's ram it.